Welcome back to New Day Northwest. A new movie that is opening up in theaters nationwide this week is written and directed by Seattle native Brett Smith. Freedom's Path tells the story of a young white Union soldier terrified of battle who deserts his own regiment only to discover the real meaning of friendship through his closeness with a young, heroic black man. The movie is centered around the Underground Railroad and focuses on the relationship between the two men who become brothers. Brent joins me now to talk about the making of the film and the unique partnership that benefits historically black colleges and universities. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing this story. This movie it's so powerful, and it reminds me and all of us about the brutality of war, about the reality of what it looked like then. Why was it so important to you to tell this story?
For me, it was so. I had never seen a story of this era that where we saw the African American characters helping a white character. Mm-hmm. I wanted to flip a classic narrative, and so in this story, it's our soldier that's rescued mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually from these free African Americans living in the South. And I also feel like this story. It breaks down barriers in the sense that it's not a story about slavery. It's not a story about the Civil War. It's a story about humanity and these two individuals becoming brothers, as you mentioned. And so it was really important to try and tell a unique story that I feel like hasn't been explored to the extent that it should be in this era.
And you said the word right there, humanity, because I think that when we watch this, we remember the awful dehumanization of slaves. And I have to say, though, I mean, you're a white man writing the story focused on the experience of free slaves. How did you write this script? I mean, what kind of research did you do?
A lot. So 86 drafts of the script, but it was a lot of in-depth research. So there's something called the Library of Congress has something called the Federal Writers Project. It's this amazing resource. I had no idea about it, but I stumbled upon it, where in the 1930s and 40s, the government sent hundreds of interviewers down into the South and the Southeast to interview the last living generation of individuals who lived under bondage. And these are people who, when they were living under slavery, they weren't 5 years old or 3 years old. I mean, these were people who were 30 years old and they lived a lifetime. And what was amazing is when these interviewers went down and interviewed these individuals, they recorded the interviews phonetically. So they didn't edit it for proper grammar, proper English. So you get a sense of the flow of language and accent and all these amazing things. There's actually even some audio recordings, which it's unbelievable. And so they have it broken down by state. So really diving into the historical record, getting firsthand accounts wherever we could. And I think also whenever you approach something where you're representing people, representing people who went through a very hard time is coming from doing it through a place of humility and asking a lot of questions and being open to the process of constantly trying to find that authentic voice and that authentic story.
This is what I loved about the movie. It is as beautiful as it is brutal. There are moments that are so heart-stopping, heart-pounding. Why was it so important to you? Because obviously it was, to make sure that this was not just a historic piece of fiction, but historically accurate. I mean, there are moments when you wish something didn't happen, but it did.
Yeah, it was important for us. It was really important to make sure that we went into the shadows, but we didn't live there. And so we wanted to portray this as real and authentic as we can. In fact, another element of this is I didn't know this until the process of researching, but there were over 250,000 free African Americans living in the South leading up to and during the Civil War. And there's never been a narrative film centering around these individuals. And so for me, it's what were their dreams? What were their hopes? What were their wishes? What was motivated and moved them, especially at this time when you have a country brand new, predicated on liberty and freedom, and yet it denies that to a large subset of people. So I think it was so important for me to tell this element of American history that is powerful and profound, in a lot of ways.
And I'm glad you did, because there was a lot of learning that goes on with this film as well, because of things that maybe we didn't know. I mean, there were certainly things I Googled afterwards to ask questions about, okay, what the Army was here, where. I mean, it's very fascinating and educational. Behind the scenes, I have to imagine it was a process for the actors at all times, sometimes a very painful process. And for the rest of the crew, what was it like behind the scenes?
Oh man, so many things I could say. In terms of the actual process for the actors, there were many scenes, like you mentioned, that had a lot of significance. They were heavy, and so it was for all of our actors being prepared, coming and having a lot of conversation beforehand, saying, okay, how are you feeling? What are we going through? Any questions? Me asking, hey, does this feel authentic? Does this feel real? Really finding it and being very collaborative in the process. But there's also a lot of fun. I think it's interesting because when you're dealing with such heavy gravity level of emotion, there's almost a levity that you have to bring to it to kind of counterbalance that in some ways. But it was a family environment, and we leaned on each other, and there's a lot of element where we trusted each other, and that was a big element of it.
Well, you can tell in the product that is so beautiful. You've also partnered with HBCUs. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so for me, creating a film takes a long time. It's a big process, and it's an amazing privilege when you get the chance to do it. And we didn't want to just tell a film with a story with a message, or a story that's going to impact you in some way. We wanted to actually make a real impact, and we feel that education and freedom are inextricably connected, and that they're synonymous. And so we've partnered with HBCU Go, this amazing company, Byron Allen's company, to give back. Opening weekend, 100% of the profits to the film are going to go to a select number of historically black colleges and universities with an emphasis on the arts, and then 10% throughout the theatrical run of the film. So we're really wanting to actually make an impact and not just tell a story that entertains.
So y'all better go this weekend, because this is when it's going to make a difference. Thank you so much for being here with us, and like I said, for sharing this story.
Thank you, Emily.
All right, well, Freedom's Path opens nationwide at AMC and Regal Theaters starting tomorrow, February 3rd. As Brett said, a portion of all ticket sales will go to the historically black colleges and universities, specifically for their arts programs. More